Welcome, friend, tonight. Before we begin, allow yourself to arrive exactly where you are. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to understand completely. This is the long night, a quiet place where stories unfold slowly, where wisdom is not rushed, and where rest is not something you earn but something you remember. You may be listening as the day fades or deep in the silence of early morning. You may be tired in your body or simply tired in your mind. However you have arrived here, it is enough. The teachings you are about to hear circle around one of the most universal human experiences. A question that arises again and again in countless forms throughout every life. What do we do when everything seems to be falling apart, when difficulty surrounds us, when the path forward is unclear, when effort no longer seems to bring relief? These stories do not promise to remove hardship from your life. They do not offer quick solutions or clever strategies. Instead, they offer something quieter and perhaps more enduring. They point toward a way of being with difficulty that softens its weight, a way of resting inside uncertainty without being crushed by it. The Buddha spoke often of dukkha, the subtle, persistent unsatisfactoriness that touches all conditioned life. He never denied the reality of pain. He never claimed that awakening meant escaping struggle. What he taught instead was something both simple and profound. Pain is inevitable, but suffering arises from how we meet pain. There is a space, sometimes very small, sometimes barely noticeable, between what happens to us and how we respond. In that space, freedom lives. In that space, peace is possible. Not later, not after everything improves, but here, now, in this very breath. You do not need to remember every word you hear tonight. In fact, it may be better if you do not try. These stories are not meant to be held tightly. They are meant to wash over you the way waves move across the surface of the sea. Sometimes you may be listening closely. Sometimes your mind may drift. Both are welcome here. As you listen, you may hear of travelers and forests of kings and rings of tea, shared in moments of danger, of patience, impermanence, compassion, and the gentle art of letting go. Each story is a doorway. You are free to step through or simply to rest at the threshold. Before we continue, take a slow, easy breath. Notice the weight of your body where it rests. Allow your shoulders to soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let the day loosen its grip. Whatever has been troubling you does not need to be solved tonight. Whatever questions you carry can remain unanswered for now. The mind can rest. The heart can rest. Even the effort to rest can rest. There is an ancient teaching simple enough to be overlooked that runs like a quiet thread through all that follows. Peace is always available. Not because life becomes predictable, not because danger disappears, but because awareness itself is untouched by circumstances. We often imagine that calm must be earned, that it arrives only after problems are resolved. Yet again and again, those who have walked this path have discovered something surprising. Even in the middle of uncertainty, something sweet remains. Something easily missed, something waiting patiently to be noticed. Tonight you are invited to listen not with the mind that analyzes, but with the awareness that receives. Let the stories carry you. Let the images form and dissolve. Let meaning arise on its own without effort. And if sleep comes, let it come. If wakefulness remains, let it remain. There is no wrong way to be here. In a moment, we will begin with a very old story. A story that has traveled across centuries, reshaped by countless voices, yet never losing its heart. It is a story about fear and time, about being suspended between what we cannot escape and what we cannot control. And it is a story about honey. So settle in. Let the night stretch long and gentle before you, and when you are ready, we will take the first step together. Long ago, in a time before maps were precise and before paths were carefully marked, there lived a traveler who spent much of his life walking. He walked not because he was lost, but because movement itself had become his way of understanding the world. Village to village, forest to forest, he carried little with him. A small bundle of food, a worn cloak, and a quiet curiosity about life as it unfolded beyond the familiar. One evening, as the light of the day softened and the shadows grew long, the traveler found himself entering a forest unlike any he had known before. The trees here were ancient, their trunks thick and twisted, their branches woven together so tightly overhead that only fragments of sunlight reached the forest floor. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth, moss, and leaves that had fallen and returned to soil countless seasons ago. Birdsong echoed faintly in the distance. Insects hummed low in the undergrowth. The forest was alive yet strangely calm, as if it were breathing in a slow, steady rhythm. With each step, the traveler felt himself settling into that rhythm. His body moved easily, almost without effort. His mind, which had carried many thoughts earlier in the day, now felt spacious and quiet. He was not thinking about where he was going. He was not thinking about where he had been. He was simply walking, simply breathing, simply present. This is how life often feels in its gentler moments, when nothing urgent demands our attention, when the mind loosens its grip on planning and remembering, when the present moment, unremarkable yet complete, reveals itself as enough. The traveler had been walking like this for hours. His feet knew the path even though his eyes had never seen it before. There was a trust in his steps, a sense that the forest would allow him passage, and perhaps it would have had nothing changed. But life, as the Buddha taught, is not defined by stillness alone. It is defined by change. At first, the shift was subtle, so subtle that the traveler did not immediately register it as danger. The birds fell quiet, one by one, until the forest seemed to be holding its breath. The insects' hum faded into silence. Even the leaves overhead seemed to still. Then came the sound, low, distant, almost mistaken for thunder. The traveler slowed. His body responded before his mind fully understood. Another sound followed closer this time, heavy, deliberate, the rhythm of something large moving through undergrowth that did not part easily. He turned. From the shadows between the trees emerged a tiger. Its body was massive, its muscles shifting fluidly beneath striped fur. Its eyes were fixed, unblinking, filled not with rage but with focus. The focus of a creature that knows exactly what it wants. The forest, which moments ago had felt welcoming, now seemed to narrow and press inward. There are moments in life like this. Moments when what we have been quietly avoiding steps fully into view. A diagnosis, a loss, a sudden change we did not choose. The feeling is unmistakable. The ground beneath us no longer feels stable. The calm we assumed was permanent reveals itself as temporary. The traveler did not stop to think. He ran. His feet struck the earth hard and fast. His breath came sharp and quick. His heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo inside his chest. Branches scraped his arms as he pushed forward the forest, no longer a place of beauty but a maze of obstacles. Behind him, the tiger followed. It did not roar. It did not rush wildly. It moved with terrifying steadiness, conserving energy, confident in its strength. The sound of its pursuit grew closer with every step. The traveler could feel it now, not just hear it. A presence pressing in from behind, relentless and patient. This too is familiar. When fear arises, the mind races. We imagine escape routes. We push ourselves beyond exhaustion. We believe that if we just move fast enough, if we just try hard enough, we can outrun what threatens us. But some things cannot be outrun. The traveler's legs began to burn. His breath grew ragged. The forest floor dipped and rose unpredictably beneath his feet. And just when it seemed there was nowhere left to go, the ground opened before him. An old well lay hidden among the trees, its stone rim worn smooth by time. The wooden cover that might once have protected it had long since rotted away. It was a dark mouth in the earth, silent and waiting. There was no time to consider whether this was safety or another danger. With the tiger closing in, the traveler made a single instinctive choice. He leapt. For a brief moment there was only falling, the rush of air, the flash of the forest rim above him, the glimpse of a striped paw reaching for where he had been a heartbeat before. Then darkness. The walls of the well slid past him, cool and damp. The sounds of the forest vanished, replaced by the echo of his own breath. And just as fear threatened to overwhelm him completely, his hand struck something solid. A root, thick, rough, strong. His fingers closed around it with desperate force. His fall stopped abruptly, leaving him suspended in the darkness, his body swaying gently, his breath coming in uneven gasps. For now at least the chase had ended. For now he was alive. He clung there in silence, unaware that this moment hanging between what he had fled and what he had not yet seen was only the beginning. The traveler hung there for a long moment, his arms trembling, his fingers locked around the rough surface of the root. The darkness of the well pressed in on him from all sides, cool and heavy as though the earth itself were holding its breath. Slowly, painfully, his heartbeat began to steady. His breath, which moments ago had come in sharp, frantic gasps, softened into something closer to rhythm. Above him, a faint circle of light marked the opening of the well. The forest canopy framed it like a distant memory. He could still see fragments of sky, pale and unmoving, and then crossing that circle of light, something shifted. The tiger appeared at the rim, its massive head lowered into view, its eyes scanning the darkness below. From where the traveler hung, the animal seemed impossibly large, its presence filling the opening completely. Its breath drifted down into the well, warm and damp, carrying the sharp scent of muscle and fur. The tiger did not growl. It did not leap. It simply waited. Fear, when it truly arrives, does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it is silent, still, absolute. The traveler felt his arms tighten instinctively, his grip on the root becoming almost painful. His muscles burned with effort, and already he could sense the strain beginning to spread through his shoulders and back. This was not a position that could be held for long. His body understood that, even if his mind resisted. The tiger remained above, patient and unhurried. It did not need to act quickly. Time, it seemed, was on its side. The traveler's thoughts began to race. How long can I hold on? Will the root break? Will the tiger wait until I fall? These questions circled endlessly, each one tightening the knot of fear in his chest. His mind leapt ahead, imagining outcomes, rehearsing endings that had not yet arrived. This is what the mind does when confronted with uncertainty. It fills the unknown with stories, most of them unbearable. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness below, he became aware of something else. Far beneath his dangling feet at the bottom of the well, something moved. At first it was only a suggestion of motion, a shifting shadow. Then slowly, the shape resolved itself. A snake. Its body lay coiled in the dampness. Below thick and heavy, its scales catching what little light filtered down. It lifted its head slightly, sensing movement above its tongue, flicking in and out of its mouth. The traveler felt a fresh wave of fear wash through him. Above the tiger, below the snake, and between them nothing but a single root and the strength of his own tired arms. There are times in life when it feels exactly like this. Trapped between two fears, pressed from above by what we cannot escape and from below by what we cannot face. The mind searches desperately for a safe place to stand but finds none. We tell ourselves that once this situation is resolved, then we will rest. Once we are free from this danger, then we will breathe. But here there was no resolution in sight. The traveler swallowed hard, his throat dry. His arms trembled more violently, now small shudders running through them as fatigue set in. The root, which had felt solid moments before, now seemed fragile. He could feel its roughness biting into his palms. Tiny grains of dirt crumbled away under his fingers and fell silently into the darkness below. Time passed, though he could not tell how much. In moments of fear, time stretches and warps. Seconds feel like hours. Hours vanish without trace. All he knew was that his strength was fading. Then he noticed something else. Just above where the root emerged from the wall of the well, two small shapes moved in the dim light. At first he thought his vision was failing him, but as he watched, the shapes became clear. Two mice, one white, one black. They scurried back and forth along the edge of the stone, their tiny teeth gnawing steadily at the base of the root. The sound was almost imperceptible, a faint scratching, soft and rhythmic. Yet the meaning of it struck him with sudden clarity. The root was being eaten away, day and night, light and dark, moment by moment. The traveler felt something inside him shift. The situation, already dire, now revealed its deeper truth. Even if the tiger did nothing, even if the snake below never moved, even if his arms somehow found the strength to hold on longer than seemed possible, the root itself would not last. Nothing here was permanent. This realization did not bring immediate calm. At first, it intensified his fear. His chest tightened. His breath grew shallow again. He had reached the edge of his effort, and still there was no escape. Yet in the midst of this realization, something unexpected occurred. His mind, exhausted from struggling, began to slow. The constant stream of thoughts, the planning, the imagining, the desperate bargaining began to lose momentum. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere left to plan. The future which his mind had been racing toward offered no solutions, and so, reluctantly at first, his awareness returned to where he actually was. Here, now, hanging in this moment. He became aware of the sensation of the root beneath his fingers, the coolness of the stone against his back, the rise and fall of his breath. the distant sound of water dripping somewhere deep below. The tiger above was still. The snake below was still. The mice continued their quiet work, and for the first time since he began to run, the traveler stopped fighting what was. He did not let go of the root, but he let go of the frantic grasping of his mind. In that pause, fragile and fleeting, something within him softened, and in that softening, a new way of seeing began to emerge. Suspended in the quiet darkness of the well, the traveler remained still. His body no longer fought the moment, but it had not yet relaxed either. There was a fragile balance in him now, a careful listening, the kind that emerges when the mind, exhausted by fear, begins to sense that struggle alone will not save it. Below him, the snake shifted slightly. The sound was faint, a subtle scrape of scales against stone, but it was enough to send a ripple of tension through the traveler's body. His legs drew instinctively upward as if distance alone could offer protection. The snake raised its head a little higher, its eyes reflecting the dim light filtering down the well. It did not strike. It simply waited. Above, the tiger remained at the rim, its gaze unwavering. The animal had not moved for some time. It did not pace. It did not grow impatient. It seemed to understand something the traveler was only beginning to grasp. Time would do the work. And time, represented so quietly by the two mice, continued its steady passage. The white mouse gnawed during moments of light. The black mouse gnawed during moments of darkness. Together they worked without pause. The traveler watched them now, his awareness drawn not by panic but by a strange clarity. Each small movement of their teeth loosened more of the root. Tiny fragments fell away and disappeared into the darkness below, swallowed before they could ever be seen again. Moments vanished like this, he realized. One by one, unnoticed, irretrievable. For the first time since he leapt into the well, a deeper understanding settled in his chest. This was not simply a matter of escape or survival. This was a picture of life itself. The tiger above was danger obvious, immediate, impossible to ignore. The kind of fear that announces itself loudly, the kind that sends the heart racing and the body running. The snake below was a quieter threat, unseen, until it was too late. The fear of what waits beneath the surface, the future we imagine but cannot fully see. And the mice were time, always chewing, always moving, whether we notice or not. The traveler felt a tightening in his chest, but this time it was not pure fear. It was something closer to grief. A recognition of how much of his life had been spent running from discomfort, from uncertainty, from the simple truth that nothing lasts as long as we wish it would. His arms trembled again, sharper this time. Pain shot through his shoulders. His fingers, numb and raw, threatened to lose their grip. The root creaked softly under the combined weight of his body and the slow erosion at its base. There would be an end to this. Of that there was no doubt. And yet in this clarity, another realization emerged, gentle, almost whispered. The end had always been there. Before the forest, before the tiger, before the well. The traveler had known in some distant way that life was uncertain, that bodies weaken, that paths disappear. But like so many, he had treated this knowledge as abstract, something to be acknowledged briefly and then set aside. Now there was nowhere to set it aside. The darkness of the well seemed less oppressive than before. The air felt cool against his skin. The stone wall at his back was solid, ancient, unmoving. The traveler became aware of the simple fact of being alive in this moment, not in the imagined next moment, not in the feared final one, but here. He noticed the rise and fall of his breath. In, out. Each breath arrived on its own without his command. Each breath left without asking permission. His body, even in danger, knew how to continue. The tiger did not move. The snake did not strike. The mice continued chewing. And in the midst of all this, something unexpected caught his attention. Near the wall of the well, just within reach of his eyes, a small vine had crept through a crack in the stone. At its end hung a single, glistening drop of honey. It caught what little light there was and reflected it softly, like a star glimpsed through cloud. The traveler blinked, unsure at first if exhaustion had begun to distort his vision. But the honey remained perfectly still. A sweetness. Here his mind struggled to make sense of it. Danger surrounded him on all sides. His strength was failing. Time was visibly running out. And yet there it was. A simple, beautiful thing offered without explanation. He felt a pull toward it. Not the desperate pull of survival, but a quieter curiosity. Carefully shifting his weight as little as possible, he reached out with one trembling hand. His fingers brushed the honey and instinctively he brought them to his lips. The taste startled him. It was rich and warm, unmistakably sweet. For a brief moment, the fear loosened its grip. The ache in his arms faded into the background. The darkness of the well receded. There was only this taste, this moment, this life. He closed his eyes, not to escape, but to fully feel what was already there. In that instant, the traveler was no longer running. He was no longer hanging between past and future. He was simply alive. And in that aliveness, a profound truth revealed itself, not as an idea, but as an experience. Even here, even now, there is sweetness. The sweetness lingered on the traveler's tongue, long after the honey was gone. It did not erase the danger. It did not strengthen his arms or repair the root beneath his hands. Yet something inside him had shifted quietly, but unmistakably. He opened his eyes. The well was still dark, the stone walls still cold and damp. The tiger still waited above, patient and unmoved. The snake still coiled below its presence, heavy in the shadows. The mice still gnawed at the root, their work steady and indifferent. Nothing outside had changed, and yet the traveler was no longer the same. His breath moved more freely now, rising and falling without the sharp edge of panic. The tension in his jaw softened. His shoulders, though aching, were no longer clenched in blind resistance. He had not escaped the situation, but he had stepped out of the frantic struggle against it. This, he sensed, was important. He noticed how quickly his mind tried to pull him away again. Thoughts surfaced uninvited and insistent. How much time do I have left? What will happen next? Is there a way out that I haven't seen? Each thought tugged at him, urging him back into fear, back into imagining futures that did not yet exist. And yet each time his mind leapt forward, the taste of the honey seemed to call him back. Here, now. He began to understand something subtle but profound. The danger had never fully prevented him from being alive in this moment. It was his resistance, his constant racing toward escape, that had kept him from noticing what was already present. Life, it seemed, did not pause for our crises. It continued to offer itself moment by moment, whether we were ready or not. The traveler rested his forehead gently against the stone wall. The coolness steadied him. He felt the texture of the rock rough and uneven beneath his skin. He listened to the faint drip of water far below, a slow, patient rhythm echoing through the well. Each sensation anchored him. He was aware now of how fragile his grip truly was. His arms shook with exhaustion. His fingers burned where the root pressed into his palms. The mice had chewed away more of the root's base. It was thinner than before, less reliable. And still, the traveler did not panic. This did not mean he had given up. It meant something else entirely. He was no longer demanding that the moment be different before allowing himself to live within it. The mind often tells us that peace must wait. That calm is a reward we receive after problems are solved, after threats disappear, after certainty is restored. But hanging there in the well, the traveler could see how deceptive that promise was. If peace depends on the absence of danger, then peace is always postponed, always just out of reach. Yet here he was, in undeniable danger, tasting something very close to peace. The tiger shifted slightly above its weight, pressing against the stone rim. The sound was low and heavy, a reminder that the situation had not softened. The traveler acknowledged it without flinching. Fear arose, a natural response, but it no longer flooded his entire being. Fear, he realized, did not have to be the enemy. It could be felt without being obeyed. The snake below lifted its head again, tongue flicking, sensing the traveler's presence. The sight sent a brief surge of adrenaline through his body. His heart quickened, his grip tightened. Then gently, he breathed. He did not push the fear away. He did not feed it with stories. He simply allowed it to be there alongside everything else. The honey, the breath, the ache in his arms, the sound of time gnawing away. All of it belonged to this moment. The traveler became aware of something else, something easily overlooked. Despite the danger, despite the exhaustion, there was a strange completeness to the experience. Nothing was missing from the moment itself. The desire for the moment to end, that was extra. That was something the mind added. For a while he simply hung there, fully present. Moments passed, or perhaps it was only seconds. Time had lost its usual shape. Eventually his arms trembled more violently. The root groaned under the strain. The mice had nearly gnawed through it entirely. The traveler knew the end of this suspension was approaching, and still he did not turn away. He did not cling to the honey that had already dissolved. He did not try to recreate the sweetness. He did not bargain for more time. He stayed with what was. This too, he sensed, was part of the lesson. The sweetness of life cannot be held. It arrives, it is tasted, and it passes. Trying to make it permanent only turns it bitter. Above him, the tiger leaned forward, sensing movement, sensing the inevitable. Below, the snake coiled tighter, ready. The traveler inhaled slowly, deeply. He felt the air fill his lungs, felt his chest expand, felt the simple miracle of being alive for one more breath. Whatever happened next would happen. But this moment, this awareness, this presence was complete. And that was enough. The moment stretched thin as the root itself. The traveler felt the final fibers beneath his fingers begin to give way. There was no dramatic snap, no sudden collapse, just a quiet loosening, like a breath slowly exhaled. Tiny particles of dirt and bark fell past him, disappearing into the darkness below, carrying with them the last illusion of stability. He understood now. This was never a story about escape. The tiger above was not merely a beast of flesh and bone. It was the pressure of life, responsibilities, expectations, losses, dangers, always close behind us, always urging us forward. The snake below was not simply a threat waiting in the dark. It was the fear of what lies ahead, the imagined futures that coil in the mind and strike before they ever arrive. And the mice were time, day and night, light and dark, moment by moment. They gnawed whether we watched them or not. The traveler's arm shook violently now. His body had reached its limit. Pain flared through his shoulders and down his spine, sharp and undeniable. The instinct to struggle surged again, fierce and urgent. And yet beneath that instinct, something else remained steady. Awareness. He was not calm because the situation was safe. He was calm because he no longer demanded that it be safe before allowing himself to live. The honey had taught him that, not as a concept, but as a direct experience. Even in the midst of fear, something sweet can be tasted. Even when nothing lasts, this moment is still here. The traveler noticed how the mind tried one last time to bargain. Just a little longer, just one more solution, just one more effort. He smiled faintly, a small, almost imperceptible softening around the eyes. He had chased just one more for much of his life. One more village, one more path, one more answer. And yet life had always been happening only here. The route finally gave way. There was a sensation of falling, brief, weightless, undeniable. The rush of air, the widening of awareness. And then something unexpected. The tiger did not leap. The snake did not strike. Instead, the traveler landed in water. Cold, dark water enveloped him, shocking his body into motion. He gasped, then kicked instinctively, pushing upward with everything he had left. His hands broke the surface, grasping at the stone walls of the well. With effort, born not of panic, but of presence, he found footholds and pulled himself toward a narrow ledge just above the waterline. He collapsed there, soaked and trembling, his breath coming fast but alive. Above, the tiger snarled, once frustrated, thwarted, before turning away. Below, the snake slipped back into the depths, its threat dissolved by distance and water. The traveler lay there for a long time, chest rising and falling, heart gradually slowing. The lesson settled into him, deeper than words. He had not known how this would end, and that he realized was the point. So much of his suffering had come from believing that he needed to know, that safety depended on certainty, that peace required guarantees. Yet here, suspended between danger and death, the future had remained unknown, and still life had unfolded. Not as he imagined, not as he feared, but as it did. Eventually, when his strength returned, the traveler climbed out of the well. The forest greeted him again, unchanged, indifferent, alive. The light filtering through the trees seemed brighter now, not because it had changed, but because he had. He walked on, carrying nothing new in his hands, yet holding something precious in his heart. This story has been told for centuries, not because it offers a clever escape, but because it reveals a truth many of us forget. We are always between the tiger and the snake. Time is always chewing at the root. The future is always uncertain, and still there is honey. Not later, not once everything is resolved, but here, in the warmth of breath, in the sound of rain, in a single moment of presence. The traveler did not become fearless. He did not gain control over life. What he gained was something quieter, something stronger. the ability to taste life even when it trembles. As you listen now, perhaps lying still, perhaps drifting closer to sleep, notice the simple fact of being here. The day's tigers may still linger. Tomorrow's snakes may still wait. Time may still be moving silently, steadily. And yet in this very moment, there is something sweet enough to rest in. Let yourself feel it. The traveler walked on, leaving the well behind him, but not the understanding it had offered. The forest slowly closed around his footsteps, just as life always does, quietly, without ceremony. Nothing had been solved forever, nothing had been made safe for good, and yet, something essential had changed. He no longer needed life to be predictable in order to meet it fully. He had learned that even when the ground gives way, even when time is gnawing unseen, there can still be a moment of sweetness, tasted then released.
Mr. Dante.
And as the night deepens, as your breath softens and the world outside grows quieter, another story begins to unfold. A different place, a different life. A king who believed happiness had arrived, and another who believed it had left him forever. Between them, a single truth, small enough to fit inside a ring, yet vast enough to hold an entire lifetime. There was once a young king whose name traveled farther than he ever did. It passed from merchant to merchant, from neighboring courts to distant valleys, always spoken with a tone of respect. Some said he was fortunate. Others said he was wise beyond his years. Most agreed on one thing under his rule. Life felt stable. He had inherited the throne early, at an age when many are still unsure of themselves. In the beginning, he had ruled cautiously, listening more than he spoke, weighing every decision with care. Those early years were demanding, yet something steady grew within him. Confidence shaped by experience rather than arrogance. And then gradually life began to respond. The land flourished. Fields turned green in their seasons, heavy with grain. Rivers followed their courses without flooding. Trade routes remained open and calm, protected, not by force but by mutual trust. Conflicts that once hovered at the borders dissolved quietly, as if they had simply lost interest. Inside the palace there was an ease to daily life. Courtyards filled with sunlight. Stone corridors stayed cool beneath bare feet. Servants moved without urgency, their tasks guided by rhythm rather than pressure. Decisions came to the king without resistance. Problems appeared, yes, but they arrived with solutions close behind. From the outside, it seemed as though the kingdom had found its balance. From the inside, the king began to believe something subtle and dangerous. He believed this balance belonged to him. Each morning he woke without alarm, greeted the day with calm anticipation. He read reports that affirmed what he already felt, that things were going well, that the structure he had helped maintain was solid. He spoke with advisors whose faces mirrored his confidence. The future felt generous, almost friendly. In the evenings, the king often stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city. Below him, lanterns flickered as dusk settled, their glow spreading gently through streets and markets. The sound of voices rose and fell like distant water. There was music, sometimes laughter drifting upward, softened by the night air. In those moments, a warm certainty settled into his chest. This is my life now. This is how things are. He did not speak these thoughts aloud. He did not need to. They lived quietly beneath his breath, shaping the way he held himself. the way he moved through the world. He had worked for this, after all. He had been disciplined, thoughtful, fair. Was it not natural that peace should follow effort? This is how happiness begins to harden into expectation. The king did not notice when gratitude slowly shifted into assumption. He still felt thankful, of course, but beneath that gratitude lived an unspoken belief that this state of ease was deserved and therefore stable. Over time, his sense of self intertwined with the success of the kingdom. When reports were favorable, he felt expanded whole. When even minor disruptions occurred, a delayed shipment, a disagreement among officials, he felt a faint tightening in his chest. At first, it was nothing worth naming. A flicker of concern, a passing irritation, a thought quickly dismissed. He told himself this was responsibility, leadership, attention to detail, and perhaps it was. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something else entered his inner life: vigilance. He began to review reports more frequently, asked for updates sooner than necessary. When problems arose, his mind jumped ahead, imagining how they might grow if not contained immediately. Still, the kingdom thrived. The people praised him openly now. Songs were written. Travelers spoke of the capital as a place of harmony. Visiting dignitaries admired not only the wealth of the land, but the calm presence of its ruler. The king accepted their praise with grace, yet something inside him stirred uneasily. What if this changes? The thought arrived uninvited, like a cool draft through an open door. He rarely allowed it to linger. Instead, he turned his attention back to what was working, to the evidence of stability all around him. But the thought returned, again and again, and each time it did, it carried with it a quiet tension, a sense that something precious might be lost even if there was no immediate sign of danger. This is how peace becomes fragile. Not because life has changed, but because the mind has begun to cling. One afternoon, while walking through the palace gardens, the king paused beside a fountain. Water spilled endlessly over carved stone, never holding its shape for more than a moment. He watched it for a long time, noticing how it flowed without effort, without resistance. A strange awareness brushed his mind. Nothing here is trying to stay the same. The thought unsettled him. He turned away, resuming his walk, the sound of water fading behind him. That evening, clouds gathered earlier than expected. The sky darkened heavy with rain. Thunder rolled distantly, low and slow. The king returned to his balcony, watching as the first drops struck the stone below, leaving darkened circles that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The city remained calm, safe, alive, and yet a quiet discomfort settled in his chest. Nothing was wrong, but something felt uncertain. He did not yet understand this feeling. He did not know that it marked the beginning of a deeper lesson, that the ground he believed to be solid had already begun to shift, not beneath his feet, but beneath his understanding. Happiness, he was about to learn, does not promise permanence. It visits, it rests for a while, and then inevitably it moves. For now the rain fell gently, the kingdom slept, and the king, unaware of what awaited him, rested inside a peace he believed would last. The first sign of change arrived without drama. It came as a single report, delivered early in the morning, written in careful language, meant to soften its impact. A border province had suffered unexpected flooding. Homes were damaged, fields lost, supplies would be needed. The king read the report, slowly, his expression calm. He summoned his advisors, issued instructions, and ordered immediate aid. The kingdom's systems moved into action as they always had. On the surface, nothing felt wrong. Yet when the chamber emptied and silence returned, the king remained standing, the parchment still warm in his hands. A faint pressure lingered behind his eyes, unfamiliar and unwelcome. He told himself this was compassion, concern for his people. That was natural, that was good. But beneath that concern lived something else, a quiet resistance to disruption. More reports followed in the weeks that came. Not disasters, not collapse, just friction. A trade route temporarily closed due to unrest beyond the borders. A diplomatic misunderstanding that required careful negotiation. A trusted advisor falling ill, leaving decisions slightly heavier than before. Each issue was manageable. Each was addressed. And yet, the sense of ease the king had known began to thin. Sleep arrived later each night. When it came, it was shallow, filled with dreams of unfinished conversations and plans that unraveled just as they seemed complete. He woke before dawn, his mind already moving, already calculating. During the day, he maintained his composure. He spoke with authority. He reassured his court. His voice did not waver. Inside, however, the ground felt less certain. For the first time in years, the king felt as though he were responding to thought, rather than guiding it. His thoughts returned again and again to the same questions, circling without rest. Why now? What did I overlook? How do I restore what I had? These questions offered no answers, only exhaustion. The true rupture came quietly disguised as policy. In an effort to stabilize the economy, the king approved a measure he believed was prudent. The intention was sound. The timing, however, was not. Markets reacted sharply. Confidence wavered. Murmurs spread through the city, not accusations, not rebellion, but doubt. The tone had changed. Standing before his council, the king listened as advisors spoke carefully, choosing their words with precision. He nodded, adjusted plans, absorbed responsibility. He remained composed, but something deep within him cracked. When the meeting ended, he dismissed everyone and closed the chamber doors behind them. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. He lowered himself into a chair, suddenly aware of how tired his body felt. The despair that met him was not dramatic. It did not arrive with tears or panic. It came as a cold weight pressing inward, a sense of being lost inside a life that no longer responded as it once had. Everything he had leaned on success, competence, stability felt unreliable. He saw now how much of his peace had depended on things continuing smoothly, how tightly he had held the idea of control, how deeply he had mistaken favorable conditions for security. The realization did not comfort him. It frightened him. The king felt foolish, exposed. Had his happiness truly been this fragile? Had he built his inner stability on circumstances he could never fully command? His breath shortened, his chest tightened. The walls of the chamber seemed closer than before. For the first time since ascending the throne, he felt afraid. Not of enemies, not even of failure, but of uncertainty itself. He wanted certainty, a path forward, a voice that could tell him what to do next. Yet, no such voice came. The room remained silent. Time passed without shape. As afternoon light shifted toward evening, the king remained seated, caught between regret and exhaustion. Every attempt to plan the future only deepened the sense of helplessness. His thoughts raced, yet went nowhere. Eventually, almost without awareness, his hand drifted to the ring on his finger. He had worn it since his visit to the sage, though it had faded into the background of his life. Now his fingers traced its smooth surface, grounding him slightly. The sage's words returned to him. Only read it when you are certain you can no longer endure the moment you are in. The king hesitated. Part of him resisted. Reading the ring felt like admitting defeat, acknowledging that he had reached the limits of his strength. He wanted to believe he could still manage, still control, still restore what had been lost. But honesty rose quietly, unmistakable. He was exhausted. He was lost. He could no longer endure pretending otherwise. Slowly, deliberately, he turned the ring inward. The engraving caught the fading light. The letters were small, simple, unadorned. He read the words once, then again. This too shall pass. They did not strike him like revelation. They did not erase the weight in his chest. But they landed with a strange steadiness, as if they had been waiting for him to arrive at this moment. The king closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, his breath deepened. The despair remained. The problems were still real. The future was still uncertain. And yet something subtle had shifted, not outside him, but within. The moment he believed he could not endure was being endured. The words had not promised rescue. They had offered something quieter, something more reliable. Change. Everything he was facing would move. It would not stay frozen in this form forever. The pain, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it belonged to time, not eternity. This understanding did not solve his problems, but it gave him room to breathe inside them. And in that space, something essential began to return. Not confidence, not control, but the strength to remain present. What followed would take time. It would unfold gradually without shortcuts or guarantees. But the door had opened, and beyond it waited a lesson that would reshape not only how the king faced suffering, but how he would one day meet happiness again. That lesson begins in the next part. The night passed slowly. The king did not sleep much, but for the first time in many nights, his wakefulness did not feel frantic. He lay still, listening to the subtle sounds of the palace settling around him. The distant echo of footsteps, the soft exhale of wind through open corridors, the occasional creak of old stone cooling in the dark. The words from the ring rested quietly in his awareness. This too shall pass. They did not demand his attention. They did not insist on belief. They simply remained like a steady presence in the background, untroubled by his uncertainty. When dawn arrived, it came without ceremony. Pale light crept into the chamber, touching the edges of walls and fabric. The king rose and washed his face, noticing how ordinary the morning felt. The world had not changed overnight. The kingdom was still facing difficulties. The future was still unclear. And yet something inside him felt different. He moved more slowly than usual, as if testing the weight of his own body in motion. Each step felt deliberate, grounded. He realized that for weeks, perhaps months, he had been rushing through thoughts, through decisions, through moments, trying to outrun uncertainty. Now there was nowhere he needed to run. Throughout the day, the familiar demands returned. Advisors brought updates. Messengers delivered news that carried both promise and concern. The machinery of leadership continued to turn. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable. When tension arose, the king noticed it before it tightened his chest. When fear appeared, he recognized it without immediately obeying it. When uncertainty surfaced, He did not rush to fill it with answers. The words from the ring did not silence his thoughts. They gave him space around them. He began to see how much suffering had come not from the events themselves, but from his resistance to their impermanence. He had wanted stability to be permanent, happiness to be guaranteed, life to follow a predictable pattern. But life he saw now had never agreed to that. In quiet moments between meetings, the king found himself reflecting on the nature of change, how seasons shifted without apology, how even the strongest structures weathered over time, how the body itself aged, cell by cell, without asking permission. Nothing stood still. This realization did not bring despair. Instead, it softened something in him. The burden of needing to secure the future began to lift. Days turned into weeks. Some problems resolved, others evolved into new challenges. Progress came unevenly. There were moments of relief and moments of frustration. Through it all, the king noticed that his inner state no longer swung as wildly as before. He slept more deeply now, not because everything was under control, but because he had stopped trying to control everything while resting. At night, when worries surfaced, he reminded himself gently that tomorrow would arrive, whether he planned it perfectly or not. During council meetings, he listened more than he spoke. He allowed silence to exist without immediately filling it. He noticed how often clarity emerged, not from force, but from patience. Patience, he was learning, was not passive waiting. It was active presence. One afternoon, while walking alone through a quiet hall, the king paused beside a window. Outside, clouds moved slowly across the sky, reshaping themselves without effort. He watched them for a long time. They were never the same from one moment to the next. And yet, the sky remained. Something clicked inside him. Perhaps he did not need to be the unchanging center of his life. Perhaps he could be like the sky, spacious enough to allow weather to pass through without being defined by it. Later that evening, he held the ring again, turning it inward, not out of desperation this time, but out of curiosity. This, too, shall pass. The words felt different now, less like a lifeline, more like a description of reality. He noticed something important. The phrase did not promise improvement. It did not guarantee success. It did not claim that pain would be replaced by pleasure. It simply stated that whatever was present now would not remain fixed. There was honesty in that, and freedom. The king realized that his strength had not returned because circumstances had improved. It had returned because he no longer required circumstances to be stable in order to be steady himself. He began to trust his capacity to meet what arose. This trust was quiet. It did not announce itself. It showed up in small ways, in a calmer response to bad news, in a measured pause before difficult decisions, in the ability to sit with discomfort without immediately seeking escape. Gradually, the crisis that had once felt overwhelming began to loosen its grip, not because it disappeared entirely, but because it no longer defined the king's inner life. The suffering had moved, the fear had shifted, the moment had changed. True to the words on the ring, it was passing. The king did not forget the hardship. He did not dismiss it. He allowed it to become part of his understanding, shaping him rather than breaking him. Yet the ring had one more lesson to offer. For life, as he was about to discover, does not test wisdom only in times of pain. It also tests it in times of joy. Soon ease would return. Laughter would rise again. Success would visit his days once more, and when that happened, the true depth of the teaching would finally reveal itself. But that story unfolds next. Joy returned the way morning light does, without asking permission, without making promises. It did not arrive as a celebration or a sudden victory. There was no single announcement, no clear moment the king could point to and say, "Here." This is when everything became good again. Instead, ease slipped back into life, quietly, woven into ordinary days. Trade resumed along roads that had once been uncertain. The market steadied. Fields recovered from their losses, not all at once, but enough to ease the worry of hunger. The people's voices softened their laughter, returning not as noise but as warmth. The king noticed these changes with care. He did not rush to name them success. He did not gather his court to proclaim that stability had been restored. Instead, he watched, he listened. He allowed the days to unfold without tightening around them. This too was new. In the past, happiness had carried urgency, a desire to secure it, protect it, hold it in place. Now when ease appeared, the king felt something different, an openness, a gentleness. One evening he stood once more on the balcony overlooking the city. The lamps below flickered in the familiar pattern he had once taken for granted. Music drifted up from a distant gathering. The air was mild, carrying the scent of evening flowers. The same scene that had once convinced him of permanence now felt entirely different. His hand moved to the ring without thought. He turned it inward. "This too shall pass." The words did not diminish the moment. They sharpened it. The king felt the warmth of joy more clearly now, precisely because he was no longer trying to trap it. He breathed in the scene, the sound, the light, the quiet satisfaction in his chest without asking it to stay. This happiness was alive, and because it was alive, it would change. For the first time, this truth did not frighten him. He saw how impermanence had once felt like a threat, only because he had believed happiness should last. Now he understood something subtler. Impermanence was not the enemy of joy. It was the reason joy mattered at all. If moments did not pass, they would lose their depth. If pleasure were permanent, it would become invisible. Standing there, the king allowed gratitude to rise, not as relief, not as triumph, but as presence. He felt thankful without clinging, content without demanding more. The shadow that had once accompanied happiness, the quiet fear of losing it, was gone. When joy arose, he met it fully. When it faded, he did not chase it. When difficulty returned, he did not collapse. Life moved, and he moved with it. This understanding began to shape the way he ruled. Decisions were no longer driven by the fear of disrupting harmony. He acted when action was needed and waited when waiting was wiser. He allowed uncertainty to exist without rushing to erase it. The people noticed something had changed, though few could articulate it. The king seemed steadier, less reactive, less invested in appearances. He listened more deeply, spoke more thoughtfully, and allowed silence, where before he might have filled it with control. At night, when he lay down to sleep, his mind no longer replayed the day in search of reassurance. He rested in the knowledge that whatever tomorrow brought would also shift pass. There was humility in this. The king no longer believed happiness was something to secure. He saw it as something to meet, moment by moment, with open hands. This did not make him passive. It made him responsive. He had learned the deeper meaning of the words on the ring. They were not meant only for suffering, they were meant for everything. In the teachings of the Buddha, this truth is called anicca impermanence, not as an idea to be debated, but as a reality to be lived. When impermanence is resisted, life feels unstable. When it is embraced, life becomes fluid. The king did not renounce joy. He did not detach from life. He simply stopped asking it to promise permanence. And in doing so, he found a peace. Deeper than certainty, a peace rooted not in conditions, but in understanding. As the night deepens now, as your breath slows and your body grows heavier, let this truth settle gently. Whatever feels good tonight does not need to last forever to be real. Whatever feels heavy does not need to define you. Everything changes, everything moves, and within that movement there is room to breathe. Another story waits, one that begins not with a king or a traveler, but with a simple question about compassion and what happens when we forget to let go. But that comes later. For now, rest in this understanding. Let it soften your expectations. Let it loosen your grip. The night is long, and you are allowed to be here exactly as you are. The king did not ask life to stay the same anymore. He learned to meet each moment as it arrived, knowing it would change, knowing he would change with it. In that understanding, his grip loosened, his breath softened, and the night grew quieter around him. And now, another story begins. Not about a king, not about wealth or loss, but about ordinary travelers on an ordinary road. A moment when fear rises suddenly, when instinct demands action, and when doing nothing feels like the most dangerous choice of all. The road narrowed without warning. What had once been a wide, forgiving path slowly tightened, pressed in by tall stone walls that rose on either side like silent witnesses. The light shifted as well, thinning into long bands of shadow that stretched across the ground. Even the air felt different here, still heavy, as though it had learned to hold its breath. 5 travelers walked together, their footsteps no longer falling in easy rhythm. They had not set out as a group. Each had begun the journey alone, drawn onto the same road by chance timing or quiet necessity. At first, they had exchanged names, shared food, spoken lightly of where they came from and where they hoped to go. But as the path grew steeper and more confined, conversation faded. Now there was only the sound of walking. It was the youngest among them who noticed first. He slowed, then stopped altogether, lifting a hand without fully knowing why. His heart was already beating faster by the time the others turned to look at him. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. They listened. At first there was nothing, just the wind brushing against stone, the distant cry of a bird, the faint scrape of their own breath moving in and out. The youngest traveler felt foolish for a moment, heat rising to his face. Then it came again. Footsteps, not behind them exactly, not ahead. Somewhere beyond the stone walls, moving parallel to their own pace. Slow, measured, more than one pair. Fear, once invited, does not arrive alone. The group grew tense instantly. One traveler peered ahead, scanning the narrow curve of the road. Another glanced back the way they had come, suddenly aware of how far they were from open ground. The sound grew clearer now, voices low and indistinct, carried faintly by the air. They were not alone. "We should move," someone said quickly. "Now." "Yes," another agreed. If we hurry, we might, what the youngest traveler cut in his voice tight. Outrun them, no one answered. The instinct to act surged through the group like electricity. Muscles tightened, shoulders lifted, breath shortened, every part of the body prepared for motion, for escape, for doing something, anything that felt like control. And then, in the middle of that rising urgency, the eldest traveler sat down. He lowered himself onto a flat stone beside the road as though responding to a signal no one else could hear. His movement was unhurried, almost gentle. He did not look around nervously. He did not strain to listen. He simply sat. The others stared at him in disbelief. "What are you doing?" the youngest demanded. "They're close." The elder nodded calmly. "Yes," he said, "they are." "We don't have time for this," another traveler snapped. "We need to move." The elder did not argue. He reached into his pack and removed a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He set it carefully on the stone beside him and began to unwrap it. Inside was a kettle. The youngest traveler felt something close to panic rise into anger. "This is madness," he said. "If we stay, we'll be caught." The elder looked up, his eyes steady and clear. "Perhaps," he replied softly. "But fear does not see clearly when it is running." The words landed strangely, not comforting, not convincing. And yet they interrupted something, a tiny break in the momentum of panic. The elder arranged a few small sticks beneath the kettle, his hands moving with quiet familiarity. He struck a spark, coaxing a flame to life. It flickered weakly at first, then steadied. The sound of footsteps beyond the stone walls grew louder. The youngest traveler's chest felt tight. Every instinct screamed that sitting here was wrong, dangerous. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, torn between running alone and staying with the group. One by one, reluctantly the others lowered themselves to the ground. The elder poured water into the kettle and placed it over the flame. The fire crackled softly, an almost absurd sound against the tension pressing in from all sides. Minutes passed. The water began to warm. A faint hiss rose from the kettle, thin and rhythmic. Steam curled upward, catching the light before dissolving into the air. The footsteps slowed. The voices beyond the walls murmured words, still indistinct, still unreadable. The youngest traveler clenched his fists so tightly, his fingers ached. He could feel his pulse in his ears. The elder removed a small pouch from his pack and placed tea leaves into simple cups, one for each traveler. When the water was ready, he poured slowly, deliberately. "Drink," he said. The youngest traveler hesitated. His hand shook as he lifted the cup. The warmth seeped into his fingers, grounding him in a way he did not expect. He took a small sip. It was just tea. Ordinary. Plain. And yet the act of drinking changed something. His breath slowed without effort. His shoulders dropped slightly. The narrowness of the road loosened just enough for awareness to return. Around them, the footsteps stopped. The voices lingered for a moment, then drifted away, fading gradually into silence. Whatever had been moving alongside them had chosen another direction, or perhaps had never meant harm at all. No one spoke. They remained seated as the ravine returned to stillness. The fire burned low. Steam thinned and vanished. The youngest traveler stared at the empty road, his heart still racing but no longer frantic. Finally, he turned to the elder. "How did you know?" he asked quietly. "That stopping would work." The elder smiled faintly. "I did not know," he said. I only knew that fear was louder than truth. The youngest traveler looked down at his cup, now empty, still warm. Something in him shifted. Not relief, but curiosity. If running was not always the answer, what else had he been missing? The road ahead remained uncertain. The path behind offered no guarantees. And yet, for the first time since the fear had risen, he felt a small space open inside him. A pause. And in that pause, the possibility of seeing clearly. But the meaning of what had just happened was not yet ready to reveal itself. That understanding would come later. For now, the kettle cooled, the fire faded, and the travelers gathered their things, each carrying with them a question that would not let go. They remained where they were long after the last trace of sound had vanished. No one hurried to stand. No one suggested moving on. The road, once sharp with urgency, now felt strangely neutral, as though it had loosened its grip. The youngest traveler still held his cup even though the tea had cooled. He had not realized how tightly he had been clutching it until his fingers began to ache. Slowly, he loosened his grip and set the cup down beside him. Silence stretched. Not the brittle silence of fear, but something wider, softer. A silence that did not demand immediate answers. The elder poured the last of the tea onto the ground, an unceremonious gesture that felt oddly complete. Then he sat back, resting his hands on his knees, eyes half closed. He did not look like someone who had just faced danger. He looked like someone who had simply been present. The youngest traveler watched him closely. Inside, his body was still catching up with what had happened. His heart beat slower now, but unevenly. His thoughts drifted in and out, replaying the moment again and again. The sound of footsteps, the urge to run, the certainty that stopping would be the end of them. And yet they were still here. "I don't understand," he said at last. His voice sounded different to his own ears, quieter than before. "Everything in me said we should run." The elder opened his eyes and looked at him. "Yes," he said gently. "That is what fear does. It narrows the world until only one path seems possible." "But what if you were wrong?" the young traveler pressed. "What if they had been dangerous?" The elder nodded. "They might have been." The answer unsettled him. He had expected reassurance, wisdom, something cleaner. "But you still chose to stop," he said. "I chose to wait," the elder replied. "There is a difference." The others listened, now drawn into the conversation. One of them, a woman with dust-streaked sleeves and tired eyes, spoke next. "It felt like my body had already decided," she said, "before my mind could catch up." The elder smiled faintly. "That is also fear," he said. "It lives in the body first." The youngest traveler thought about that. How his legs had tensed, how his breath had shortened, how everything in him had moved toward action without asking permission. "And the tea?" he asked. "Why that?" The elder glanced at the kettle. "Because fear feeds on momentum," he said, "and tea requires patience." They sat with that for a moment. The road ahead curved out of sight, just as it had before. The stone walls still stood. The light had shifted slightly, the shadows stretching longer now as the day leaned toward evening. Nothing about the world had changed, but something in the group had. They gathered their belongings slowly, each movement unhurried. The youngest traveler noticed how different this felt from moments before. Earlier, every second had felt urgent, heavy with consequence. Now time seemed to open. As they began to walk again, he found himself paying attention to small things he would normally have ignored. The sound of his steps against stone, the way the air brushed his face, the rhythm of his breath returning to something natural. Fear had narrowed his awareness. Stillness had widened it again. They walked for some time without speaking. Eventually, the youngest traveler broke the silence. "I always thought courage meant doing something," he said. "Taking action, making a move." The elder glanced at him, eyes kind. "Sometimes it does," he said. "And sometimes courage means not acting long enough to see what is actually happening." The words stayed with him. As the path opened into a small clearing, they decided to stop for the night. Grass replaced stone beneath their feet. A narrow stream whispered nearby, its water catching the last light of day. The air felt lighter here, more forgiving. The youngest traveler lay back on the ground, staring up at the sky as stars began to appear. His body felt heavy in a good way, as though it had finally been allowed to rest. He replayed the moment again. Not with fear this time, but curiosity. What if he had run? What choices in his life had been driven by the same urgency? How many paths had he taken, simply because stopping felt too dangerous? Nearby, the elder prepared a simple meal. The fire crackled softly. The ordinary sounds of evening returned grounding and familiar. Later, as the others drifted toward sleep, the youngest traveler sat beside the elder once more. "Will this always work?" he asked quietly. "Waiting, I mean." The elder shook his head. "No," he said. "Sometimes waiting is unwise. Sometimes action is necessary. Then how do you know?" The elder looked out toward the darkened road. "You don't," he said. "Not at first, but fear and clarity feel different in the body. Fear rushes, clarity waits." The younger man absorbed this slowly. That night he slept more deeply than he had in days, not because the world had become safe, but because he had learned something small and powerful. He did not need to answer fear the moment it spoke.
There was space, and in that space, something else could emerge. Patience, he realized, was not weakness. It was attention, and attention, when allowed to settle, often revealed paths that panic could not see. The deeper meaning of this lesson would take time to unfold. It would appear again in quieter moments, far from ravines and unseen footsteps. But for now, the night held them gently, and another layer of understanding waited just ahead. Morning arrived quietly, as though it did not wish to disturb anyone. A pale light slipped across the clearing, touching the edges of grass, the smooth surface of the stream, the outlines of sleeping bodies. The travelers stirred one by one, waking without urgency. There was no signal to rise, no pressure to move on immediately. For the youngest traveler, this was unfamiliar. He lay still for a long moment, listening. The world sounded different in the early morning, softer, more spacious. Even the birds seemed to sing with restraint, as if aware of the calm that had settled during the night. His body felt rested, but more than that, it felt settled. The tight knot that had lived in his chest for so long was gone, replaced by a gentle weight, grounded and warm. He sat up slowly. The elder was already awake, seated near the stream. He was not doing anything in particular, not preparing food, not watching the road, simply sitting, hands resting loosely on his knees, eyes open but unfocused. The youngest traveler watched him from a distance, noticing something he had missed before. The elder was not relaxed because nothing was happening. He was relaxed because he was not demanding that something happen.
This realization arrived without effort, like a thought that had been waiting for permission. As the others woke, the clearing filled with small, ordinary movements. Someone stretched. Another rinsed their face in the stream. A simple meal was prepared and shared without conversation. There was no need to explain what had already been felt. After they ate, no one reached immediately for their pack. The road was still there. The journey still awaited. Yet something had changed in how it was being approached. The youngest traveler noticed how his mind kept returning to the moment in the ravine. Not with fear now, but with curiosity. He replayed it slowly, observing details he had missed before. The speed with which panic had taken over. The narrowness of his thoughts. The way stopping had felt impossible until it happened. He realized something else, something subtle. The moment they stopped, nothing miraculous occurred. No clear sign appeared. No voice spoke from the stone walls. The danger did not immediately resolve. What changed first was not the situation. It was the energy. Fear had been loud, sharp, demanding. It had filled every space, leaving no room for perception. When they stopped, that energy had nowhere to go. It burned for a moment, then softened like a fire deprived of fuel. In that softening, space had appeared, and within that space, the world had revealed itself differently. The youngest traveler stood and walked to the stream, kneeling beside it. He dipped his hands into the cool water and watched the ripples spread, overlapping, fading into one another. Each movement affected the whole surface, yet none of them remained. This, too, was something he had never really seen before. The elder joined him, standing quietly at his side. It felt like nothing, the young traveler said at last. Like we did nothing at all. The elder nodded. From the outside, perhaps, but inside, the younger continued, slowly choosing his words. It felt like everything shifted. Yes, the elder said, because you stopped feeding the fear. They stood there for a while, watching the water move around stones, dividing and rejoining without struggle. When you panic, the elder continued, the mind contracts. It tries to force reality into a shape it can control. When you stop, the contraction loosens. And then what the young traveler asked. Then you can see, the elder replied. They began to walk again not long after. The path unfolded gradually, winding out of the clearing and back toward open land. The stone walls of the ravine were behind them now, though the memory remained. The youngest traveler noticed how differently he moved. His steps were still purposeful, but not rushed. His attention was no longer fixed solely on what might happen next. He was aware of the present moment in a way that felt new and strangely comforting. As they walked, small challenges arose, as they always do on long journeys. A disagreement over direction, fatigue, hunger returning sooner than expected. And yet something remarkable happened. Each time tension appeared, there was a pause. Not a forced pause, not a deliberate technique. Simply a moment where no one reacted immediately. In that moment, voices softened, options emerged. What might once have become conflict dissolved into adjustment. The youngest traveler watched this with growing understanding. Stillness was not passivity, it was responsiveness without panic. By midday, the sun stood high, warming the road ahead. The group stopped beneath a tree for shade. As they rested, the young traveler found himself smiling quietly. "What is it?" one of the others asked. "I was just thinking," he said. "If you had told me yesterday that stopping would save us, I wouldn't have believed you." The elder smiled faintly. "If I had told you," he said, "it would not have helped." The younger man laughed softly at that. Understanding he was beginning to see was not something given. It was something discovered, often only after fear had been allowed to run its course. As the afternoon wore on, the space within him continued to widen. Thoughts still came. Worries still appeared, but they no longer demanded immediate action. They floated through awareness like clouds across the sky, noticed and allowed to pass. This was the opening, the gap between impulse and response, the space where choice becomes possible. The youngest traveler sensed that this lesson would not remain confined to this journey. It would follow him into conversations, decisions, moments of stress and uncertainty. Whenever fear rose, he would remember the kettle, the waiting, the quiet shift that changed everything. As evening approached, the group slowed again, choosing a place to rest before nightfall. The road stretched ahead, unknown as always. But the unknown no longer felt hostile. It felt open. What they had discovered was not a rule, not a guarantee of safety. It was a way of relating to uncertainty, one that did not collapse under pressure. Stillness had revealed a path that action alone could not. And in the final light of day, as shadows lengthened and the air cooled, the youngest traveler felt something settle deeply within him. Not confidence, not certainty, but trust. The full meaning of this trust, when to wait, when to act, had not yet fully formed. That wisdom would come with time, with experience, with listening, and it would be named. But that belongs to the next part. By the time the sun slipped behind the low hills, the travelers had reached a place where the road widened again. The land opened gently, no longer pressing in from both sides. Tall grass swayed with the evening breeze, and the sky stretched wide above them, washed in soft shades of amber and blue. They stopped without discussion. It was not fatigue alone that guided them, but a shared sensing, a quiet agreement that this was the right moment to rest. The youngest traveler noticed this and felt a subtle gratitude. Earlier in his life, stopping had always felt like failure. Now it felt like listening. They made camp slowly. No one rushed. The fire was built carefully with just enough wood to offer warmth and light. When the flame caught, it did not roar. It settled steady and contained. The kettle appeared again. This time no one questioned it. Water was poured. The fire warmed it patiently. Steam rose thin and unhurried, dissolving into the cooling air. The youngest traveler watched the process with a new appreciation. He saw how the making of tea was not about the drink itself, but about honoring time, allowing heat, water, and stillness to meet in their own rhythm. As they drank, the elder spoke. "Patience," he said almost to himself, "is often misunderstood." The youngest traveler looked up attentive. Many believe patience means enduring discomfort while doing nothing, the elder continued. But true patience is not numbness. It is awareness without urgency. The words settled gently among them. When fear rises, the elder said, it demands immediate action. It tells you that waiting is dangerous, that stillness is weakness. But fear does not see the whole field. It sees only escape. The youngest traveler nodded slowly. He could feel the truth of this in his body, not as an idea, but as memory. There is another way, the elder went on. a way of acting that comes from alignment rather than panic. He lifted his cup slightly, letting the steam brush his face. Sometimes, he said, the most skillful action is no action at all. The youngest traveler felt a quiet recognition. He had grown up believing that effort was always required, that value came from motion, from pushing forward regardless of inner condition. Yet here he had witnessed how restraint, when guided by awareness, could dissolve danger rather than provoke it. This is known, the elder continued, in some traditions, as non-action. Not because nothing happens, but because nothing is forced. The fire crackled softly. In waiting, the elder said, "You allow reality to reveal itself. You allow the moment to complete its own movement. Action taken after that is often simpler, clearer, and less harmful." The youngest traveler thought back to the ravine, to the moment fear had demanded running, to how stopping had felt like stepping off a cliff. And yet it had been that very pause that opened space for clarity. Patience, he now understood, was not passive. It was precise. It knew when to move and when not to. As the night deepened, the group fell quiet. Each traveler turned inward, reflecting on the day. The fire burned lower, its warmth spreading softly across the ground. The youngest traveler lay back and watched the stars emerge one by one. The sky felt immense, untroubled by human urgency. In its vastness, his own worries seemed smaller, lighter. He felt something settle in him, a trust, not in outcomes but in timing. There would be moments in his life when action was necessary, moments when waiting would only deepen harm. But there would also be moments when doing less would reveal more, when restraint would protect what force could not. This discernment, he sensed, would become one of the great skills of his life. Knowing when to act, knowing when to wait, and knowing the difference between fear and clarity. The fire finally dwindled to embers. The kettle was emptied. The night wrapped itself around the travelers, cool and forgiving. Tomorrow the road would continue. There would be choices to make, paths to follow, uncertainties to meet. But tonight, there was nothing to solve, only breath, only presence, only rest. And as sleep approached, the youngest traveler understood something essential. Not every problem requires an immediate answer. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every moment of stillness is a loss of time. Sometimes it is the moment where wisdom quietly enters. The lesson of the kettle would stay with him long after this journey ended, returning in moments of pressure, hesitation, and doubt. And when it did, he would remember the simple truth learned on this road. Waiting, when guided by awareness, is not inaction. It is alignment. And alignment, once found, carries its own quiet power. The fire faded into embers, and the road fell silent again. The travelers slept without fear. Not because the world had become safe, but because they had learned when to move and when to wait. In that quiet understanding, the night deepened, gentle and unhurried. And now, another story begins. A quieter one. Not about danger on the road, but about the weight we carry when we listen too closely to the pain of others. About kindness, compassion, and what happens when care has no place to rest. In a small town tucked between low hills and long stretches of quiet fields, there lived a person who seemed to have an unusual gift. People said it in different ways. Some called it kindness, some called it patience, some called it a rare kind of presence that made the world feel softer. But the truth was simpler than any label. This person knew how to listen. Not the polite listening that waits for its turn to speak. Not the distracted listening that nods while the mind drifts elsewhere. This was a listening that felt like a steady lamp in a dark room, calm, warm, and unwavering. When someone spoke to them, they felt seen. They felt as though their words mattered, as though their pain was not too much, as though their confusion did not need to be hidden. The listener's eyes did not dart away. Their posture did not close. Their breath did not tighten when a story grew heavy. They remained, and in a world where so many people were rushing, defending, performing, or surviving, that kind of remaining was powerful. At first, it happened naturally. A neighbor came by one evening, standing at the edge of the doorway, with a hesitant smile that did not reach their eyes. They said they just wanted to say hello, but their voice trembled slightly. The listener invited them in, offered warm tea, and waited. Silence filled the space for a moment. Then the neighbor began to speak slowly at first, then in waves. About a marriage that had grown cold, about the loneliness of sharing a home with someone who felt far away, about the shame of wanting more and not knowing how to ask. The listener did not interrupt. They did not offer solutions too quickly. They did not tell the neighbor what they should do. They simply listened. And when the neighbor finished, they did not feel fixed. But they felt lighter, as if a weight that had been pressed against their chest had been moved just a little into the open air. After that, more people came. A young man whose job had ended, suddenly leaving him feeling useless and afraid. A mother worn thin by worry for her child. An elderly woman carrying grief so old it had become part of her voice. Even strangers passing through town sometimes found themselves lingering, drawn by a quiet sense that here in this small home, it was safe to be human. The listener welcomed them all. They offered a chair, a cup of tea, a moment of unhurried attention. Sometimes they spoke gently, asking simple questions that helped the other person hear themselves more clearly. Sometimes they said nothing at all, allowing silence to hold what words could not. People began to seek them out, not because they had answers, but because they offered something rarer. A place where pain could exist without being judged. The listener did not think of themselves as special. In fact, they often felt they were doing very little. Sitting, breathing, being present. Yet again and again they watched the same quiet miracle unfold. When someone is truly listened to, something in them unclenches. Their thoughts slow, their breath deepens. Their body remembers that it is not alone. This was compassion in its simplest form. Not a grand gesture, not a heroic sacrifice. Just the willingness to be with another person's experience without turning away. At night, after the last visitor had gone, the listener would sit by the window and watch the town settle into darkness. The street outside would grow quiet. Lamps would click off one by one. The wind would move through the trees with a soft, steady sound. Sometimes the listener felt a deep warmth in their chest during these moments, a quiet satisfaction that their presence had helped someone feel less burdened. Other times they felt only stillness. Either way, they returned to the same practice, a slow breath in, a slow breath out, and a gentle acceptance of the day as it had been. It would have been easy in those early days to believe that compassion was limitless, that listening could be offered endlessly without cost. That being present for others was always nourishing, and sometimes it was. There were evenings when the listener closed the door after someone left and felt an unexpected lightness, almost as if the act of helping had also helped them. As if kindness itself had a quiet energy that returned when given freely. But life, as it often does, began to add more. More stories, more sorrow, more people arriving with heavy hearts looking for somewhere to set their pain down. The listener's home became known. People spoke of it with relief as if it were a well of water in a dry season. And like a well, it drew those who were thirsty. At first, the listener was grateful. They told themselves that this was good, that this was what they were meant to do, that if they could bear a little heaviness in order to ease someone else's suffering, it was worth it. Yet somewhere beneath that generosity, a small shift began, so subtle. It was almost invisible. A tiredness that lasted a little longer after each conversation. A lingering sadness that did not belong to their own life. A heaviness that followed them into quiet moments, not enough to alarm them. Not yet. Still, on certain nights, the listener would lie in bed and find their mind replaying the voices of the day. A phrase spoken through tears. A confession whispered with shame. A grief that had filled the room like smoke. They would inhale, exhale, and try to let it pass. Most of the time it did. But occasionally the listener would wake in the middle of the night with a tightness in the chest, as if someone else's sorrow had knocked gently from inside their own heart.
They did not speak of this to anyone. They did not even fully admit it to themselves. They simply continued, day after day, offering the same open door, the same steady presence. Because this is what compassionate people often do. They keep giving. And in the beginning, it feels like light. A quiet light that warms others. A light that seems endless. But every light, no matter how gentle, needs fuel. Every flame, no matter how kind, can flicker. The listener did not yet know this. For now, they were still the town's quiet refuge. Still the steady lamp. Still the place where sorrow could be spoken aloud without fear. And as the night settles around you now, as your own breath slows and your body grows heavier, you may recognize something familiar in this story. The desire to help, the wish to ease suffering, the instinct to carry what is not yours. The deeper lesson of this compassion, how to keep it from becoming a burden, has not yet arrived, but it is coming. And it begins when the listener finally notices what they have been holding. The listener did not notice the change all at once. It crept in the way. Evening arrives quietly, without announcement, blurring the edge between day and night, until suddenly the light is gone. There was no single moment when compassion became exhaustion. No clear line where care turned into weight. There was only accumulation. Another knock at the door, another cup of tea poured, another story that ended in silence and tears. The listener continued to welcome everyone with the same open expression, the same calm voice. But something inside had begun to shift. Conversations lingered longer in the body. Voices stayed behind after the door had closed. At first, it felt like responsibility. Of course, this feels heavy, the listener told themselves. Pain is heavy. They believed that carrying a little of it was part of being kind. Yet nights grew more restless.
Sleep came later, and when it did, it was thin and easily broken. Dreams were filled with fragments, faces, unfinished sentences, hands reaching out. The listener would wake with the sense that something was being asked of them, though no one was there. During the day, they noticed small changes. Their breath shortened when someone began to speak. Their shoulders tensed before a visitor even finished knocking. Their smile arrived a fraction of a second too late. These were tiny signals, easy to dismiss. The listener brushed them aside with the same gentleness they offered others. Everyone gets tired, they thought. This is normal. But compassion, when it has nowhere to empty itself, does not simply disappear. It settles. It lodged in the body. The listener began to feel it as a weight behind the eyes, as a dull ache in the chest, as a heaviness that made even quiet moments feel crowded. They stopped sitting by the window at night. The stillness there had begun to feel uncomfortable, as if silence allowed too much to surface. Instead, they filled the space with small distractions, tidying, reading, preparing for the next day. Still, the stories followed. A man's grief surfaced while washing dishes. A mother's fear returned while folding clothes. A stranger's loneliness echoed while lying in bed. None of it was dramatic. None of it demanded attention. It simply accumulated. One afternoon, after a long day of listening, the listener felt a sudden, sharp fatigue. Not the gentle tiredness that follows meaningful work, but something deeper, an exhaustion that seemed to hollow the body out from the inside. They sat down surprised by how heavy their limbs felt. For a brief moment, an unfamiliar thought arose. I don't want to hear another story. The thought startled them. It carried guilt immediately behind it. Shame. A sense of failure. How could someone who cared so deeply feel this way? They pushed the thought away, stood up and continued with the day. But the thought returned. Not as a voice, but as resistance. A subtle tightening when footsteps approached the door. A wish, quiet and unspoken, that the knock would not come. The listener began to feel trapped by their own kindness. They had become known as the one who could hold everything, and because of that, no one considered that they too might need holding. This is how compassion fatigue begins. Not from lack of care, but from too much care with nowhere to rest. The listener noticed that their listening had changed. They were still present, but effort had entered the space. They nodded at the right moments. They offered the right words. Yet something inside felt distant, as if a thin veil had dropped between them and the person speaking. They hated this feeling. It felt like betrayal. One evening after the last visitor left, the listener remained seated long after the door had closed. The room felt unusually quiet, heavy, as though the walls themselves were listening. They placed a hand over their chest and felt the steady beat of their heart. For the first time, they asked themselves a question they had never allowed before. What happens to all this pain once it leaves their mouths? There was no immediate answer. Only a deep, spreading tiredness. The listener realized then that they had been absorbing everything, holding it as though it were their responsibility to carry. They had mistaken openness for obligation, presence for possession. They had taken in what was never meant to be kept. This realization frightened them, not because it meant they had failed, but because they did not know how to stop. They did not want to become cold. They did not want to turn people away. They did not want to lose the tenderness that made listening possible. Yet something had to change, because the body was speaking now in the only language it had left. Fatigue, tightness, a quiet refusal to continue as before. That night the listener did not distract themselves. They sat in the dim light and allowed the feeling to be there, the weight, the sadness, the weariness. They did not try to solve it. They simply acknowledged it. And in that acknowledgement, a small crack appeared. Not a solution, not relief, just a recognition. Even compassion has limits when it is not allowed to flow through. The path forward was still unclear. The listener did not yet know how to care without carrying, how to be present without being consumed. But somewhere beyond this exhaustion, another understanding waited. One that would not ask them to close their heart, but to learn how to let go. And that lesson would arrive soon, in the form of a simple image, a teacher, a conversation, and a vessel that could never be filled. The teacher lived on the edge of the town, in a small house surrounded by old trees. It was not a place many people visited without reason. The path leading there was narrow, partly hidden by grass, as if it preferred only those who truly wished to arrive. The listener had passed that path many times before. They had noticed the house in passing the way one notices something quietly present but unrelated to one's own life. Now, with exhaustion heavy in their bones and questions pressing softly from within, the listener found themselves walking that path without fully deciding to do so. The teacher greeted them without surprise. There was no dramatic welcome. No inquiry into what had brought the listener there. The teacher simply opened the door, stepped aside, and allowed them to enter. Inside the space was simple: a wooden table, 2 cups, a window letting in afternoon light. They sat. For a while, neither spoke. The listener felt the familiar urge to fill the silence, to explain, to confess the weight they had been carrying. But something about the teacher's presence made that urge soften. The silence did not feel empty. It felt patient. Eventually, the teacher poured water into the cups and spoke. "You listen to many people," they said. The listener nodded. "And you carry their pain." The teacher continued. The listener hesitated, then nodded again, this time slower. The teacher reached beneath the table and brought out a vessel. It was made of clay, simple and unadorned. At first glance, it looked ordinary. The teacher placed it between them. "Pour," the teacher said, handing the listener a small pitcher of water. The listener did as instructed. They poured slowly, carefully. The water flowed into the vessel, and then, without resistance, flowed straight through the bottom and onto the floor. The listener stopped pouring, startled. The teacher smiled gently. "This vessel," they said, "has no bottom." The listener looked closer. Indeed, the vessel was open beneath, allowing nothing to remain inside. Now the teacher said, "Imagine you are a vessel." The listener felt a subtle tightening in their chest. For a long time, the teacher continued, "You have tried to become a container. You receive pain and hold it. You believe this is compassion." The teacher lifted the vessel slightly, allowing the remaining drops to fall freely. "But true compassion," they said, "is not a container. It is a passage." The words settled slowly. The listener watched the water soak into the earth beneath the table, disappearing without trace. Something about the image felt both relieving and unsettling. If you try to keep what was never meant to be held, the teacher said, you will exhaust yourself. Not because you care too much, but because you misunderstand what care is. The listener felt emotion rise unexpectedly. Tears pressed behind their eyes, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. I didn't know how else to do it, they said quietly. The teacher nodded. Most people don't. They gestured toward the vessel again. Pain does not need to be stored. It needs to be witnessed, allowed to move, and then released. The listener sat back, letting the words settle into their body rather than their mind. So, I don't close myself, they asked. No, the teacher said. You open completely, and you let everything pass through. The listener imagined their heart as that vessel, open, ungrasping, receiving without retaining. The image felt fragile at first, unfamiliar. What about responsibility, the listener asked. What if someone needs me to hold them? The teacher's voice remained calm. You can hold a hand, they said. You can hold a moment, but you do not hold the suffering. That belongs to life, not to you. Something shifted. The listener realized they had been confusing empathy with ownership, presence with absorption. They had believed that to care deeply meant to take pain into themselves and keep it there. The teacher stood and opened the window slightly. A breeze moved through the room, cool and gentle. Notice, the teacher said, how the air enters and leaves without effort. Your listening can be like this. The listener closed their eyes. They imagined conversations flowing through them like breath. Words arriving, being felt, then moving on. Nothing trapped, nothing forced. The weight in their chest softened slightly. This was not indifference, this was freedom. The teacher returned to their seat. Practice this, they said. Not as a technique, but as a way of being. The listener nodded slowly. There was relief in this understanding, but also humility. It meant learning something new, letting go of an identity built on endurance. When they stood to leave, the teacher did not offer further instruction. They did not need to. The image of the bottomless vessel stayed with the listener as they walked back through town. Each step felt lighter than the last. They did not yet know how this practice would unfold in daily life. They did not know how it would feel to listen without carrying. But they knew this compassion did not require suffering, and caring did not require collapse. The lesson was simple, but not easy, and it was only just beginning. The listener returned home as the light was fading, the sky resting in that quiet place between day and night. The familiar door creaked softly as it opened. The same room waited inside, the same chairs, the same kettle. Nothing outward had changed, and yet the space felt different, not lighter in a dramatic way, not suddenly empty, but clearer, like a room after a window has been opened, when the air moves gently and something stale finally drifts away. The listener set their bag down and stood still for a moment, noticing their breath. In, out, simple, unforced. The image of the vessel without a bottom hovered in their awareness, not as an instruction, but as a reminder. That evening, someone came to the door, a familiar knock, careful, hesitant. The listener felt it immediately, the old reflex stirring, the subtle tightening in the chest, the instinct to brace, to prepare for weight. They paused, just for a breath, and in that breath, they remembered. They opened the door. The visitor spoke about worry, about exhaustion, about a life that felt too heavy to manage alone. The listener listened fully. Their eyes remained soft, their posture open, their presence steady. But something was different. When the words landed, they did not stick. The listener felt them pass through like water through the vessel. There was empathy, warmth, attention, but no grasping, no silent vow to carry what was not theirs. When the visitor finished speaking, there was space. The listener offered a few gentle words, not to fix, not to advise, but to reflect what had been shared. The visitor nodded, breathed softened, something eased. When they left, the listener closed the door and stood quietly. There was no familiar heaviness waiting behind the moment, just stillness. That night, the listener slept deeply. Not the exhausted sleep of collapse, but the restful sleep of release. Dreams came and went without urgency. The body rested without guarding. Days passed. People continued to come. Stories continued to be shared. Pain still entered the room. Compassion was still offered. But the listener no longer filled up. They listened like the open sky listens to weather, allowing storms to pass without becoming the storm, allowing sunlight without trying to trap it. This was upekkha, equanimity, not indifference, not distance, but a balanced heart that can meet what arises without being pulled under by it. The listener discovered something surprising. When they stopped carrying what was never theirs, their compassion grew stronger. They were more present, more patient, more genuine. There was no longer a quiet resentment beneath the kindness, no hidden exhaustion shaping their words. Care flowed naturally, freely, without effort. And when moments of fatigue did arise, as they still did, the listener recognized them quickly. They rested, they stepped back, they allowed space. They no longer confused sacrifice with love. This understanding reshaped their life in small, steady ways. Boundaries formed without hardness. Presence deepened without strain. Listening became something that nourished rather than depleted. The town did not change overnight. People still suffered. Life remained imperfect, but something essential had shifted. The listener had learned to love without drowning. As the night settles around you now, as your breath slows and your body softens into rest, allow this lesson to meet you gently. You can care deeply without carrying everything. You can be present without absorbing pain. You can love without losing yourself. Compassion does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to remain open, grounded, and free. Another story waits ahead, one that turns its gaze toward the future, toward worry and hope, toward what happens when the mind tries to live in moments that have not yet arrived. But for now, let this understanding settle. The heart can open, the hands can release, and rest can come quietly, naturally. The listener learned that love does not require collapse, and compassion does not ask us to disappear. By letting go of what was never meant to be carried, the heart stayed open, and life became lighter, moment by moment. Maimaya. And now, the night turns its attention forward, toward the future, toward the quiet worries that live in our thoughts and the hopes that pull us gently or painfully into moments that have not yet arrived. The future has a way of arriving long before it ever happens. It appears quietly in the middle of an ordinary moment, while brushing teeth, while lying in bed, while staring out a window as the day fades. It does not knock. It does not ask permission. It simply enters the mind, carrying questions that feel urgent and unanswered. What if things go wrong? What if I lose what I have? What if I make the wrong choice? This is worry, not danger itself, but the imagination of danger. Not pain, but the rehearsal of pain. The mind trying to protect steps forward into a time that does not yet exist and begins to live there. It scans the horizon for threats, problems, losses. It tells stories about what might happen and asks the body to respond as if those stories were already true. The body listens, breath tightens, shoulders lift, sleep becomes thin, and yet nothing has happened. This is the strange nature of worry. It feels active, responsible, even necessary.
It convinces us that by thinking enough, by anticipating enough, we can prevent suffering. But worry does not prevent pain. It brings pain into the present where it does not yet belong. There was once a person who noticed this pattern in themselves.
They were not particularly anxious by nature. In fact, many would have described them as thoughtful, careful, prepared. Someone who liked to plan ahead. And yet beneath that planning lived a constant unease. They would wake each morning with a list already forming in their mind. Tasks, possibilities, outcomes. If something went well, their relief was brief. If something went poorly, their mind replayed it endlessly, projecting its consequences far into the future. When they tried to rest, the future followed them. Lying in bed, they would think of conversations that had not yet happened, decisions not yet made, problems that might arise days, weeks, months from now. Their body would tense as if bracing for impact. Often they asked themselves the same question. Why can't I relax even when nothing is wrong? The answer, though they did not yet see it, was simple. They were living somewhere else, not here, not now, but ahead. The future, as imagined by the worried mind, is rarely neutral. It leans toward the negative. It magnifies risk. It narrows possibility. This is because the mind believes its job is to protect. It searches for what could go wrong and insists on addressing it immediately. The problem is that the future is not available for resolution. You cannot fix what has not happened. So the mind keeps circling, replaying, revising. This looping creates another quiet companion to worry: expectation. Expectation sounds hopeful on the surface. It whispers, I just want things to turn out well. But beneath that hope is a demand. A subtle insistence that reality should unfold in a particular way. Expectation ties peace to outcome. I'll be calm once I know. I'll be happy if this works out. I'll rest after things settle. The present moment becomes merely a hallway, something to pass through on the way to a future that promises relief. And so, the present is never fully lived. The person began to notice this most clearly during moments that should have felt calm, sitting with friends, walking in nature, drinking tea in the evening. Even then, part of their attention was elsewhere, quietly checking on tomorrow. What if this peace doesn't last? What if something is waiting? They realized then that worry had stolen something subtle but essential: presence. They were rarely where their feet were. One evening, exhausted from a day of nothing particularly difficult, they sat alone and noticed the familiar tightness in their chest. There was no crisis, no immediate problem, just a sense of unease, like a background hum that never fully switched off. They asked themselves a different question. What exactly am I afraid of right now? At first there was no answer, only sensations. tension, restlessness. Then slowly, images began to surface, not of the present moment, but of possible futures, a loss, a mistake, a disappointment. None of it was happening. All of it felt real. This was the moment they saw something clearly for the first time. Worry was not about the future itself. It was about not trusting their ability to meet it. The mind was trying to control what could not be controlled, because it did not believe that presence would be enough. This realization did not erase worry, but it softened it. They began to notice how often the mind leapt ahead and how the body followed. They saw that worry was not a personal failure, but a habit, a well-practiced movement away from now. And in noticing this, a small space opened. Not a solution, not peace, just awareness. The future, they began to understand, does not require constant visitation. It will arrive on its own, moment by moment. And when it does, it will arrive as now. For tonight, however, the future can rest. As you lie here listening, you may recognize this movement in yourself, the way the mind drifts forward, the way worry feels like responsibility, the way expectation promises relief, just out of reach. You do not need to stop these thoughts. You only need to notice where you are when they arise. Here, breathing, Aleph, the deeper relationship between worry, hope, and trust, has not yet fully revealed itself. That understanding will come next. For now, allow the future to loosen its grip. It does not need you yet, and you do not need to live there tonight. Hope often wears a gentle face. It arrives quietly, offering comfort when worry has grown heavy. It whispers that things can improve, that the future might be kinder than we fear. It feels lighter than anxiety, softer than dread, and yet hope can carry a hidden weight of its own. There was a time when the same person believed hope was the answer to worry. When anxious thoughts appeared, they countered them with hopeful ones. Maybe it will all work out. Perhaps tomorrow will be easier. There's still a chance things will turn around. These thoughts brought brief relief, like opening a window in a warm room. But relief did not last, because hope, when misunderstood, still lives in the future. It still asks the present to wait. The person began to notice a subtle tension beneath their hopeful thoughts, a quiet attachment. They were not simply wishing for things to improve, they were leaning on that improvement as a condition for peace. I'll feel better when this changes. I'll relax once the outcome is clear. I'll trust myself after I see how this ends. Hope had become a postponement. This kind of hope ties well-being to results. It makes the heart dependent on circumstances that are not yet here and may never arrive as imagined. When hope fails, it collapses back into worry, often heavier than before. There is another kind of hope, quieter and less dramatic. In the Buddhist tradition, this is sometimes described as faith, not faith in a specific outcome, but faith in the path itself. Faith that whatever arises can be met. Faith that awareness, patience, and kindness are enough, even when the future remains uncertain. This faith does not predict, it does not bargain, it does not ask for guarantees, it simply stays. The person who encountered this idea one evening while sitting with their own unease, instead of asking the future to be different, they asked a new question. What if I don't need to know how this turns out in order to be present right now? The question felt unfamiliar, almost dangerous. It challenged the belief that control was necessary for safety. And yet when they allowed the question to remain unanswered, something softened. They noticed their breath again. In, out. Nothing had changed in their circumstances. The uncertainty was still there. The future was still unknown. But the body felt less braced, less ready for impact. This was a small but profound shift. Faith, they realized, was not optimism. It was not insisting that things would be okay. It was trusting that they would be okay even if things were not. This trust did not remove difficulty. It changed the relationship to it. Worry says I must prepare for everything. Expectation says this must go a certain way. Faith says I can meet what comes. This difference matters. When the person noticed worry arise, they no longer tried to replace it with hopeful fantasies. Instead, they returned to the present moment, grounding themselves in what was actually happening. The feel of the chair beneath them, the sound of the room, the simple rhythm of breath. They did not push the future away. They simply stopped living there. Over time, something surprising happened. The future began to feel less threatening, not because it had become predictable, but because the present had become trustworthy. Each moment, when met fully, proved manageable. Pain came and went. Joy appeared and faded. Nothing stayed fixed, and still they remained. This was faith without illusion, not blind confidence, not denial, just a quiet willingness to stay with life as it unfolds. As you rest now, perhaps you can sense the difference between hoping for a specific outcome and trusting your capacity to meet whatever arrives. One pulls you forward away from rest. The other allows you to settle even in uncertainty. The mind may still wander ahead. That is its habit. But it does not need to be followed. You can return gently again and again to this moment. The future will come when it comes. And when it does, it will arrive as breath, as sensation, as now. There is still more to this story. Because sometimes the future surprises us in ways the worried mind could never imagine. Sometimes the very thing we fear dissolves on its own without effort. And sometimes what we fear becomes something entirely different. That understanding waits in the next part. There is an old variation of the story about the traveler and the tiger that is rarely told. In the version most people know, the traveler hangs between danger above and danger below. Time gnawing away at the root life, narrowing into a single fragile moment. It is a story often used to teach presence, to remind us of the sweetness that can still be tasted, even when everything feels uncertain. But there is another ending. In this version, the traveler still runs through the forest. The tiger still gives chase. Fear still floods the body, sharp and undeniable. The leap into the well still happens. The root is still thin. The mice still chew patient and relentless. Everything unfolds exactly as expected, except one thing. As the traveler hangs there, breath-ragged muscles, burning mind racing through imagined futures, something shifts. The grip of fear begins to loosen, not because the situation is improved, but because the mind has exhausted itself. There is nothing left to plan, nothing left to imagine. Only this moment remains. And then, without warning, the tiger slips. Perhaps the ground beneath it was damp. Perhaps a stone gave way. Perhaps exhaustion caught up with it at last. The reason does not matter. What matters is that the sound comes suddenly, a heavy thud, followed by silence. The traveler, still clinging to the root, does not immediately understand what has happened. Fear has trained the mind to expect danger, not relief. It takes several breaths before awareness catches up with reality. The tiger is gone. The traveler looks upward, heart-pounding eyes wide. The rim of the well is empty. No striped fur, no burning gaze, only sky, pale and unmoving. Nothing else has changed. The snake still coils below, the mice still chew, the root is still fragile, and yet everything feels different. This is how the future often arrives, not as the feared outcome, not as the hoped-for rescue, but as something entirely unimagined. The worried mind is skilled at creating scenarios. It rehearses disaster and clings to hope, convinced that between fear and expectation, it can cover all possibilities. But life is not limited to what the mind can imagine. The future contains events that no amount of worrying could predict and no amount of hoping could summon. Things fall away, paths open, problems dissolve without explanation. The traveler did not make the tiger fall. They did not solve the situation. They simply stayed. This is not a promise that fear will always disappear or that danger will always resolve itself. It is a reminder of something subtler and more reliable. We do not know what will happen next. The person who had struggled with worry began to see this truth in their own life. So many of the things they had feared never arrived. Others arrived but unfolded differently than expected. Some situations that once seemed unbearable passed quietly, leaving behind lessons rather than scars. And sometimes unexpectedly, relief appeared without effort. A conversation went better than imagined. A problem resolved itself through time. A door closed only to reveal another they had not noticed. The mind, when it worries, believes it must anticipate every outcome in order to be safe. But safety does not come from prediction. It comes from flexibility, the ability to meet what arises without collapsing or clinging. The traveler, still hanging in the well, understands this now. The falling of the tiger does not mean the journey is over. It does not guarantee safety. It simply reveals how little the traveler truly knew about what would happen. The fear had been real. The danger had been real. But the imagined future had been incomplete. This realization brings a quiet humility. If we do not know what will happen, perhaps we can loosen our grip on certainty. Perhaps we can stop demanding answers from the future before it arrives. The unknown, when met with openness rather than resistance, becomes spacious rather than threatening. As you rest now, consider how many futures your mind has rehearsed. How many of them never arrived? How many arrived in forms you could not have predicted? You do not need to know what comes next in order to be here now. The tiger may fall, the path may change, something unexpected may appear. And even if none of that happens, you will still be here, breathing, aware, alive in this moment. The freedom is not in controlling the future. It is in allowing it to remain unknown. That understanding deepens in the final part of this story. There is a strange relief that comes when we finally admit what has been true all along. We do not know. We do not know how things will unfold. We do not know which paths will open or close. We do not know which fears will dissolve on their own, and which challenges will ask to be met directly. And despite how uncomfortable this not knowing can feel, there is a quiet freedom hidden inside it. The person who had lived so long in the future began to sense this freedom slowly. Not as a sudden insight, but as a gentle loosening. The mind still reached forward at times, still tried to predict, still worried. But those movements no longer felt compulsory. They could be noticed, and then released. What changed was not the future itself, but the relationship to it. The future at once felt like a weight pulling them forward, demanding attention, demanding preparation. Now it felt more like a horizon, present but distant, not requiring constant inspection. This was the gift of not knowing. Not knowing did not mean carelessness. It did not mean giving up responsibility. It meant allowing life to reveal itself at its own pace. When worry arose, the person no longer treated it as a command. They felt it in the body, acknowledged it, and returned to what was actually happening. The sound of breath, the support of the ground, the simple fact of being here. Expectation softened as well. They noticed how often expectation had disguised itself as hope, promising peace once outcomes were secured. Now they practiced a different kind of hope, one that did not depend on results. This hope lived in trust. Trust that they could meet joy without clinging. Trust that they could meet pain without breaking. Trust that presence itself was enough. This trust did not remove uncertainty. It made room for it. Life, they realized, is not meant to be mastered. It is meant to be lived. And living does not require knowing what comes next. It requires attention to what is here. There were still moments when the future felt heavy. Moments when the old habits returned. But even then there was kindness, a recognition that the mind was doing what it had learned to do. Nothing needed to be forced away. Not knowing became a place to rest. In this rest, something surprising happened. The present moment grew richer. Without the constant pull of anticipation, small details began to stand out again. The warmth of sunlight on skin, the rhythm of walking, the comfort of a quiet evening. These moments had always been there, but they had been overlooked, treated as waiting rooms on the way to something else. Now they were enough. The traveler in the well understood this too. Whether the tiger had fallen or not no longer mattered as much. The deeper lesson was not about rescue. It was about relationship, about meeting life without demanding certainty from it. The traveler had tasted honey, not because danger had disappeared, but because attention had returned to the present. This is the invitation of not knowing, to stop living in imagined futures, to stop rehearsing endings, to meet what is unfolding one breath at a time. As the night deepens now, as your body grows heavier and your breath slows, you may feel the same invitation. You do not need to solve tomorrow tonight. You do not need to prepare for every possibility. You do not need to know how things will turn out. The future can wait. It always arrives when it arrives. For now, there is only this moment, the sound you are hearing, the rise and fall of breath, the gentle weight of rest. Trust this. Trust that life unfolds moment by moment and that you are capable of meeting each one as it comes. Nothing more is required. The stories we have shared tonight have pointed again and again to the same quiet truth. That peace is not found in control, not in certainty, not in answers. It is found in presence, here, now. And as you allow yourself to rest in that presence, you may find that sleep comes naturally without effort. The night is long, the future is unknown, and in that, not knowing, you are safe to rest. The night has been long, and you have traveled gently through it. Through forests and wells, through kings and rings, through kettles warming in stillness, through open hearts that learned how to release what was never meant to be carried. You do not need to remember every story. You do not need to hold every meaning. The night has already done its work. If you listen closely, you may notice how the body knows what to do now. The breath moves without effort. The chest rises, then softens. The shoulders settle a little lower than before. There is nothing to solve, nothing to complete. Only this quiet rhythm that has been with you all along. You have heard of honey, tasted in the present moment, of impermanence that loosens fear, of patience that waits until clarity appears, of compassion that stays open without drowning, of trust that rests in not knowing what comes next. These were never instructions. They were invitations, gentle reminders of what the body already understands.
Tonight you are not asked to improve yourself. You are not asked to become wiser, calmer, or better. You are simply allowed to rest, allowed to let the stories fade the way dreams do, leaving behind only a feeling warm, spacious enough.
Notice the places where the body touches what supports it. The weight of your head, the ease in your jaw, the slow release in your hands. If thoughts appear, let them drift, like clouds crossing a wide sky. They do not need to be followed. The future does not need you now. Tomorrow can wait outside the door. Tonight belongs to breath, to darkness, to the quiet permission to stop holding everything together. If sleep comes, let it come. If it takes time, let the time pass without judgment. Rest does not require effort. It arrives when the asking stops. You may notice the night wrapping around you more closely now, sounds growing distant, sensations softening at the edges. This is the natural turning inward that happens when the body feels safe enough to let go. There is nothing more you need to understand. Whatever remains unfinished can remain unfinished. Whatever feels unclear can stay that way. Not knowing is not a problem here. It is part of the rest. As the darkness deepens, allow yourself to sink gently into it. Like lying back into warm water. Like setting down a heavy bag you have been carrying for too long. The night will hold what you release. If this quiet has felt like a companion, if the stories have felt like a soft lamp beside, you know that this space will be here again. Waiting patiently, unrushed, a place where the mind can slow and the body can remember how to sleep. For now, let the final sounds drift away. Let the breath become smaller, slower, quieter. Let the night finish what it began. You are listening to The Long Night, a place for unhurried stories, for gentle understanding, and for rest that arrives without demand. When you are ready, sleep can take you from here.